recover loud. Let's go. I'm on a journey to discover the truth. Living life in recovery is lovely. You got the power in you. Surround yourself with positive energy. Judges hitting people with provocative penalties. Need to make a change. Advocate to change the laws. Prove to people that it's not insane. When you stand behind a cause, I'm here to speak about the pain. Recover loud to normalize the disease that's been killing all my friends and my family. The time is now to let it all go and recover loud. The benefit is healthy people, family and friends that never have to overdose ever again, never have to plead out to a lesser offense. I'm proud to say that I recover loud. I never thought I could, but I'm so proud that I discovered how to live my life again, controlling my own destiny. I needed recovery, I still need it desperately. Addiction never defined my identity. I recover loud, here to tell my own story. I recover proud, save a life of like 40. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud, here to tell my own story. I recover proud, save a life of like 40. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud. I recover loud. I recover loud. I recover loud.
I imagine that that behavior was different than it was when he was growing up. We become master manipulators during our addictions, and we hurt people, that we care about, and we really don't intend to. As I was mentioning to you earlier, I don't have experience with losing a child, but I've been that child. So I do appreciate your perspective on these questions, and I hope that the viewers will get a better understanding of what it's like to raise a child with substance use disorder. If we could back up,
Sure.
At what age, or maybe what year was it that you found out that Andrew was using?
2013. He was using prior to 2013, but in 2013, my mom was in a nursing home in Van Buren, and I said, "Hey, bud, let's go up and see Nani, and I'll take you with me because you haven't seen her yet." So he said, "Yeah." So I went to go pick him up. Gets in the car, and he looks at me, and he was honest with me. And I have to just say, he always called me mommy. I always says mommy because I was mommy. So he said, "Mommy," he's like, "I have to tell you something." He's like, "I think I need help." And I'm like, "Well, what do you need for help?" He's like, "I think I need recovery." And I'm like, "What are you doing? I know that you're smoking pot." He's like, "No, it's worse than that." So me, being blindsided, I had no idea what to do. I drove around where he lived. I drove around the block. I pulled back in front of his apartment, and I said, "You need to get out of the car." He's like, "Why? Aren't I going to see Nani?" I said, "No." I said, "I need to figure out what I need to do to help you." And I dropped him off, and then he was very upset. I heard him that day. And he actually wrote in I found a Facebook post that he wrote about how he went home and cried because he didn't want to hurt me or his family. So he was living with his dad, so it was, he was a daddy's boy too. So.
And I'm sure just learning that was painful for you, and not knowing what to do in that moment was painful.
Absolutely.
So, what was it you did after that to try to help him?
So, when I dropped him off, I went and I made phone calls. I called, I called doctors' offices. I called agencies. I'm like, I need help for my child. And at that point, he was sort of struggling even more. And he ended up in Acadia. We had 3 different evaluations in 2 days. Sorry. And by the last time when he came out holding a knife to us, the police came and brought him to the hospital. And they brought him to Acadia, and he was withdrawing in Acadia one-on-one in an isolation pod. And we weren't allowed to go see him because he was not stable at that time.
Yeah. And did you say that was 2013. Yeah.
Yeah,
And, you know, we've learned a lot since then.
absolutely.
You know, back then, I don't know if anybody even carried Narcan. So it was, I mean, it was a different world than it is today. You know, even in 2018 when I decided to get help in Caribou, I had nowhere to turn. I didn't know where to turn. There were resources, just nobody had ever told me where they were. And, you know, that's the purpose of Recovering Loud is so that people know that recovery is possible and there are ways to do it. It's not an easy conversation for parents to have with you. I remember my mom, when she was dealing with cancer, getting her prescriptions, she knew that I had a substance use problem. We'd never had the conversation. But when I'd ask her for some pills, she would know that you know, she would actually give me some. And, you know, I went through a lot of guilt and stuff with that. But I think if I had had the conversation with my mother then, you know, it could have been better. You know, she could have helped support me in a better way than just, you know, not wanting me to feel sick or in pain. And I remember I used to manipulate to get those. But so over the years, you said you did lose some friends.
Yeah, I've lost quite a few. First was my uncle, which was when I was 18. And I think I hadn't started using yet at that point. But his death was related to drugs. And he had been using for quite a while. So that was before I even used. And then after using, I mean, I've lost quite a few. Mostly people that I wasn't super close to, but there were some that I was really close to, and I have tattoos for them. And then I have one friend that was the worst, that was just over a year ago, and he had been sober for a year and a half or 2 years, came up here to visit, and overdosed in my bathroom. And none of us thought he was using, so we found him way too late, and there was nothing that we could have done. So I was maybe 8 months clean at that point, and I felt terrible. I felt that guilt of, like, I could have found him sooner, and I was in my bedroom, which is just across the upstairs, and didn't hear anything, and it really bothered me. And I've gotten over it more now, but it's still really hard. But it is what pushed me to completely stay sober. I saw...
So you didn't relapse?
No, I saw how that hurt me and my mom and his mom. They were all there. Well, his mom came shortly after we found him, and just seeing them and seeing what they were feeling and feeling it myself made me never want to put my mom through that pain again. And I don't know if I would have relapsed after that or not if I hadn't been properly medicated on mental medication, or if I hadn't had my mom to support me, or all of those things. But I'm here, I didn't relapse, and I try to tell people about it so that they know about it. It just really affected me, and he had been sober for a long time, and I want that to help someone, because it helped me.
Yeah, in the recovery community, we deal with loss all the time. Might not be somebody we're close with, but we've met, a lot of them along the way. And for myself, I use it as fuel to keep going. Because that's one person. I see an overdose death today as preventable. We do have Narcan. There's the Good Samaritan law. People can call 911 now. We didn't always have that in the past, but today there's lots of ways that we can help. Nobody goes through this life perfectly.
Right.
And it's how we go through life, how we deal with those problems as they arise, that really build our character.
Yeah.
I learned to hide. I turned to substances, which at some point you must have done.
That's exactly what I did, yeah.
So at what age did you first start using something?
Well, I was probably 12 or so when I started, kind of understanding what marijuana was. Started smoking marijuana, which kind of led me into drinking here and there, and then I started smoking cigarettes, and it was really made when I got into my freshman year of high school, and I kind of had this anxiety, depression meltdown. And I had no idea what I was going through. I didn't understand it. All I knew was I just didn't want to leave my house.
Yeah.
I was really young, and I didn't understand what it was I was feeling, but just that I was terrified. So I ended up actually homeschooling my first year of high school. And that was kind of really a dark year for me, because I kind of just isolated, because I didn't know how to deal with it. My parents tried to obviously get me into counseling and things like that, and wanted to start me with some mental health medications and stuff, but
did that happen, or?
I tried some medication for a little bit, but then I didn't want it, and then I worked through it, and then my sophomore year of high school I went back to school, and that's kind of when prescription drugs became a big part of my life. I remember the first time I tried a drug, I thought, this is the feeling that I've been looking for. And I found happiness. I found this thing that made all my problems go away, and all these feelings that I was feeling that I didn't understand just disappear. And I grew up in Stockholm. I had no idea what the stuff was or what it did. I just was with a group of friends, and we did it, and that was that.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, though, I was able to kind of not get so wrapped up in it. Somehow, I don't know. But I watched a lot of people that I went to high school with and that were my group of friends go down a completely different way with it. So I'm very grateful that I did experiment with it, and I started it, and I think it's what kind of led me into my main problem, which is alcohol.
Yeah.
Once I hit college, I kind of just felt like, well, I can't be doing the illegal drugs anymore.
Oh, yeah. Right.
My degree was criminal justice. So I really kind of was thinking, well, that's not why, so I'll just stick to drinking. Because drinking is, socially acceptable, and a lot of people do it. But it was not good for me. Alcohol kind of turned me into somebody I didn't even recognize. And I didn't really start getting bad until after I turned 21. I started blacking out. I wouldn't remember what I did or what I said. I would have people telling me the next day the things I said to them, and I would say horrible things to these people. Things that I couldn't even, and the things I would do, and you can never take that stuff back once you do it. And for a while, I was okay with it, because I'm like, everybody gets blacked out and drinks and has a good time, and that's not a big deal. But it turned out being that eventually, after a lot of trials and errors, I realized it was the alcohol that had to go,
Can I ask, where did you learn to drink like that?
That's a good question, Mike. Well, drinking was a big thing in my family. It was. My parents would come home from work and they would drink, and when we go on vacation, it was good, drink and have a good time, those kinds of things, and I think I wanted to have way more of a good time. For me, I couldn't stop.
Yeah, and see, when I started drinking at 12, and it was at family functions.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be like my aunts and uncles that lived on the lake and had the boats, and they would drink every weekend from the time they got up.
Yep.
So I learned that drinking was, as much as you could drink until you threw up or passed out.
Yep.
And then as I got older, that caused me a lot of trouble. Being at the bars in Canada, passed out on the bar. Until last call when I was woken up and handed the keys to drive back. Those crazy things happened, and I didn't know that I was drinking wrong.
Right. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I felt like I was doing what everybody else was doing.
Right. There was no difference.
Right.
So when did you notice that it was a problem for you?
Well, I think I knew for a while. I think you start to understand after a little while that then you start to justify it. in your brain. Like, you know it's not right, but then you're like, well, no, you know.
Right.
Probably by the time when I graduated college, and I started to black out almost every time I was drinking. And the things I would say become more hurtful, and the things I would do would become worse. And I was driving my vehicle home, and I had no idea how I got there. You know, who knows the people that I'm very thankfully I haven't, but I could have hurt driving my vehicle like that.
Yeah. We know that you know, quitting alcohol cold turkey can lead to seizures and be dangerous for people. Did you have any problems when you quit?
Because the big thing for me was like, it wasn't like, it was getting there. You know what I mean? I was always a binger more than I was an everyday drinker, you know. But it was getting to that point. It was getting so bad to that point where it was either I had to find another solution or I was going to end up, you know, having to drink all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember, like, when I got sober for those 2 years, and I didn't have a program, I didn't have anything like that. I just kept thinking I can do this, and I'm fine. The reality of it is that bad things keep happening in life. You know what I mean? Not everything is always happy, no matter what situation you're in.
Right. Getting rid of the substances doesn't make the world stop.
It doesn't. So I realized that the hard way. But for me, it was how I learned how to cope with my issues. So when that relationship fell apart and bad things happened, I thought, what's going to help me get through this? Well, the alcohol. That's what's going to help me get through this, you know. And so the drinking became a real issue, and I quit my job with MHC, and I decided I was going to go get some help. So I ended up in rehab in Florida, and I wanted to get as far away from here as I could because I blamed here. It was Aroostook County, it was this place, it was... I soon realized it was me, and that it wouldn't matter where I went, it was going to still... I follow myself, you know.
Yeah. I've actually helped... you know, even my own kids understand that. Yeah. You know, if there's a jerk everywhere I go, chances are I'm the jerk.
Right.
So I know in my experience, we did a lot of digging to find out, you know, what led us or what brought us to using substances in the first place. Were you able to do that?
All kinds of digging at the farm.
Yeah. What'd you find out?
So, basically, it's a lot. I started out because I was always around it. Like, my family was always partying. That stuff seemed normal to me. So the first time I tried a prescription pill, I didn't think anything different of it, you know. My brothers always used prescription pills. I never had my father around. I always looked up to my brothers, so of course I was going to do what they were doing.
Yeah.
Just using.
Yeah, so it was around you all the time as you were growing up?
The substances, alcohol was, like, my mom always went to the bars. They always had parties. My brothers were, like, when my mom was out to the bars, my brothers would babysit me or whatever, you know, and obviously they were either drinking or using some type of substance. I remember the first time I saw my brother snort a pill. I was kind of amazed by it, like, in awe of it. I always thought he was cool and stuff, you know, so when I saw that, I was like, oh, what's this, you know? Of course, he wouldn't let me use it at that point, but...
Yeah, so how old were you when you first saw him do that?
When I first saw him do that, I was probably about 8 or 9.
Yeah, and... I mean, of course, when we have older brothers or you know, family members we look up to, you know, we try to do what they were doing. And, you know, so that was the normal, everyday stuff for you.
That was normal, everyday stuff for me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't think anything different of it.
Right.
Like, I didn't think that was a toxic family until I actually went to rehab.
Yeah. So, what was the first time that you did try something?
The first time I tried something, I was 11 years old. Most people try weed. The first thing I tried was prescription pills. Besides alcohol, I tried alcohol like when I was a lot younger, but alcohol never really was my thing for the most part. Like, I could drink and stop, whatever, but prescription pills was the first actual friend, I guess you could say, that I had. My friend had back surgery in 7th grade. was 6th grade going into 7th grade, I always hung out with him. So he got prescribed the blue hydrocodones. So that was the first thing I ever tried.
Yeah. And do you remember what it was like?
Oh, it was terrific.
Yeah.
Like, it was great. Like, it made me feel invincible. It took away all the pain that I had at home. But then slowly it doesn't.
So after that first time you tried it, was it an everyday thing?
It was a slow build up at first.
Yeah.
I'd say like really after my mom passed away is when it really got bad. Like obviously I was using on and off, but it wasn't like I could always stop or whatever. I was selling stuff before then. Always getting money and stuff. As for an actual addiction, that's when it really started.
So your addiction started, or the addiction really kicked in after your mom died in 2014.
Yeah.
And you said your father wasn't around then?
No.
Okay. So you didn't know where to turn. You didn't have that family support.
The only person I had was Missy, really. But to this day, I guess I still never grieved her death. Which is probably something I should work on.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I lost my mom right around the same time. And it was right after Christmas. And, you know, I remember I was using pretty heavily at that time already. And, you know, I'll never forget the day when she looked up at me at the hospital and told me that my grandfather was in the corner and wanted to say hi to me. My grandfather had been dead for 20 years. I was pretty high and I wasn't seeing that, you know, so I'm convinced that her guardian angels were there to take her.
Yeah.
And, you know, just having that experience, I had some guilt for a while after that, you know, and I didn't grieve my mom's death either. It wasn't until recovery when my gram passed, and I grieved both losses at the same time.
Yeah.
He was in the Marines for 6 years.
6 years. Thank you for your service. I know I mentioned it earlier. My son is a Marine right now, you know, and I have concerns, you know, what he's going to see when he goes out, you know, not necessarily all the time that he may not come home, but, you know, what's going to happen when he does come home, you know, and turning to substances is a way that a lot of people, veterans, end up coping with the trauma of being assigned duty, you know. So how long did you use for?
I used from the time I was 18 until March 12th of 2021.
March 12th. So that's your recovery date?
That's my recovery date. That's my last drunk and my last suicide attempt.
Yeah. How bad did that get?
I had just lost a job. I went to my house and grabbed a shotgun and wrestled with Mom over control for it. Got control of it because she was Air Force, I was a Marine. You know, one of us had a clear advantage over the other. I got the shotgun and took off down the road with a handle of Jaeger and was pulled over before I made it 2 miles heading towards the lake because every suicide attempt I've made, I've tried to be somewhere beautiful. So the last thing that I saw was a positive thing.
To start out, you said you haven't used substances yourself, is that correct?
Yes. I've never been directly, I guess you would say, in the midst of doing it. It's always happened around me, closest friends, family. It's always been kind of in my life some way or another. Somebody's affected by it. Addiction's always been around in my family as well. My mom being alcoholic, you know, she worked through that, and addiction kind of come in all forms, I feel like, you know, and being around it, I've seen a lot of different perspectives.
So what led you to start using substances?
So, after high school, I mean, I was dabbling in and out of like pills. Like, sorting pills was like a really big thing, even like back in the day. It was just like, you know, cocaine or like pills and stuff like that. I ended up getting stuck on some of that. I dabbled on and off. But it wasn't to the point where like if I stopped I was sick, because I was just kind of dabbling. It wasn't like an everyday use type of thing. So that was like the kind of first start of me messing around with heavier drugs. And of course, like I smoked tons of weed as a teen and stuff like that.
So were the pills more of a party situation for you?
No, it was more like, I don't know, I just wanted them.
Yeah.
And it just seemed yummy at the time.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, Percocets and Vicodin and stuff like that.
And the people you were around, everybody was doing it
yeah,
as well.
Everyone was doing it, and it was just like the type of thing where like you're in it, you're sitting there and you're like, hey, I guess I do it. And
right.
I just do it, and then, but you don't know that ends up it causes a dependency. And then I got clean from all that, was doing really well, had an apartment, then, you know, got pregnant for my daughter, had my daughter, and then after my daughter, I ended up getting stuck on payments that they gave me for childbirth. So I ended up getting stuck on that, and then when there was no more, like I got sick because there was nothing. So then I just basically started going to like street drugs, which was, for me, it was the heroin, which is street drug.
So you got into heroin pretty quick.
Pretty quickly, and it's I would say like after I was doing Percocets for a while, it was easier to get right into heroin, as odd as it sounds, because the dependency was kind of already there because it was a higher milligram pill. So when I first started doing it, and I didn't even know what heroin was, my girlfriend was like, oh, you should get this, it's cheaper, you know, just do that and you can have it longer. And I had no idea what it was.
Right.
No clue, never even focused on what that was.
And where were you living at that time?
That was still Rhode Island.
Okay.
Yeah, all of my drug use happened in Rhode Island, and then I moved to Maine in 2015 to get clean and to, you know, start basically a new life because I had lost custody of my daughter at that time. And
so what else, what did that addiction to heroin do to you over time?
I ended up overdosing 3 times on fentanyl that was laced in it, and I was in my third overdose, I was in a coma for 6 days on life support.
Wow.
So it's super easy to die from. It really is. It's all chemistry. It's all based on your body weight, and if you have too much, you know, it's a medication. Literally, hospitals use fentanyl for pain management for surgery. So
I was actually prescribed fentanyl for quite a while.
Yes.
And it was easy to get hooked on. The feeling, if you're using it for pain, I was prescribed it for pain, and it worked. It worked great.
It works phenomenal.
You know,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just so quick to fall in love with because it's the effect that it gives you with these downers. It just gives you that euphoric feeling like you're floating and you're invincible and nothing can hurt you, and you're just, it's just an amazing feeling, as bad as that sounds, and that's easy to get stuck on.
Welcome to Rick's Redemption, where we are family owned and operated. We strive in cleanliness, honesty, and customer appreciation. Rick's Redemption is a recovery-ready employer who believes wholeheartedly in redemption. Here at Rick's, we support Recovery Rustic and definitely are proud to recover loud. God bless.
Anderson's Auto Repair, locally owned and operated in Sweden, Maine, specializes in all make, all model vehicle diagnosis and repair. Each individual service is backed by our nationwide TechNet 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty. Call or stop in to schedule an appointment today. Anderson's Auto, for wherever the road takes you.
Recover now, I recover loud, here to tell my own story. I recover proud, save a life of like 40. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud, yeah, I recover loud. I recover loud. I recover loud.